Right, hi. My name's John Hegarty. I am founder and creative at Bartlett Bogle Hegarty, which I helped found in 1982. 1982.
I was born
30.
in 1982.
You were born in 90. How depressing for me. This is kind of like Anyway, that's me.
Sorry, yeah. When did you start in the industry?
Do you know, when I started in the industry, it's slightly embarrassing that, because it's so long ago that I kind of make the joke about kind of around about the time Gutenberg invented movable type. But that doesn't really get much of a laugh these days. So I say round about the time water was free and we paid for music. But if you want to give it an absolute date, it was 1965.
And what was your first job?
My very first job was at an advertising agency called Benson & Bowles in Knightsbridge. And I was hired as a junior art director, because in those days when you left college there was no way you could be an art director. You had to be a junior art or an assistant art director. And you had to learn all the kind of technical things about printing on certain newspaper and magazines and screens and stuff like that before you could be allowed to kind of create.
And how did you get that job?
Well, I got the job because I was at the London College of Printing. I kind of wanted to be in advertising, so I created a portfolio with with a lovely, great teacher there called John Gillard, a legendary teacher there. And through that, just took my portfolio around and sort of met people.
What advice would you give someone getting their first job in the industry today?
Well, I mean, obviously, advice on what you should be doing to get your first job in the industry, in the creative area, is naturally have a great portfolio. Try and think about that portfolio as representing you. In other words, I don't want to see work that's been put together with the advice of 20 people and it's all their opinions in your book. So make the book personal to you, make it about what you love doing, make it fast to understand. So in other words, I say to students, obviously I'm looking at advertising. If you put television scripts in there, it's going to take me a couple of minutes to read it, and at the end of it I may not like it. Whereas if you kind of do poster ideas, I can look at it instantly and go, like that, don't like that, move on to the next one. So think about the fact that you've got a very short period of time. You've probably got me for 15 minutes. How are you going to get my attention? How are you going to get me to remember you?
And do you think it's harder now or easier to get into the industry, the creative industry?
Is it harder or is it easier now to get into the industry? Well, I think, that's kind of, I loathe it when somebody says, well, that's a yes-no answer to that, yeah. But actually, it's different. When I was coming into the industry, there was very little information about advertising and advertising agencies. You had to work it out yourself, you had to work out who you could see, who you couldn't see. It was very, very difficult. There wasn't the information there. Today, there's fantastic information about how to get in the industry, accessibility to very, very good people who are prepared to come and see you. But today there's a lot more competition. And in that sense, so that's hard. Information about the industry is much greater and is much easier to get to. So it's different. I do actually, on balance, think it's harder to get into the industry today than it was when I came in, on balance.
What do you look for when promoting someone? If someone's interested in getting promotion, what do you look for?
Right, what do I look for when promoting someone? Well, it's very difficult, really. In a sense, we don't think about promotion in the creative department. We think about giving people creative opportunities. Yes, of course, we have creative directors and we have executive creative directors and things like that. But actually, I'm much more interested in giving or seeing how people respond to briefs, how they do the work, how they come up with solutions to the problems that we're trying to resolve. So in a sense, the creative department is always different from other departments in that way. And I always say to people, in many ways, I regret having to become a creative director. I would love to have stayed just doing the work. That's what I get a thrill out of. That's what turns me on. That's what excites me. So I think if I'm talking to a creative person, I say, be wary of being over-promoted. You've come into the industry to do work. When you start getting promoted, you will find that actually you stop doing the thing that you love doing, the work. So don't rush to be promoted. Yeah, rush to get opportunity, rush to get bigger and better briefs, rush to be, to be part of a team that's trying to solve a big problem. But don't get into a kind of, in quote, a management position. That can be just very boring.
If someone was starting their own agency, what characteristics do you think someone needs to start an agency?
Well, if you're starting an agency today, the most important thing you need is a point of view. Why should I buy your agency versus somebody else's agency? What are you saying is different? What do you believe in? What do you do? So I think that's fundamentally the most important thing. And it's amazing how many people don't do that. They just sort of start an agency and you go, what do you believe in? Well, we believe in doing great work. Yeah. But what kind of great work? What's your point of view? And this is something I'll be talking about here tonight. Having a point of view is fundamentally important.
If someone started up an agency, what do you think the one or two key things someone needs to make it through their first year of trading?
What are the two things?
One or two key things.
Well, I think that the most important thing when you're starting any company, don't mind an agency, is decide what you believe in. Because what you believe in day one, or week one, will determine how you are in year 10. So establish your principles very, very, very early. If you don't do that, you will never get them established and you will never create a point of difference. Very important.
And when starting a new agency or any business, I suppose an agency specifically, do you have to have clients or can you start without them?
Well, when we started BBH, we didn't start with clients. We started with no business, but we started with a point of view about what we wanted to do. And actually, we started with a reputation. So, we had quite a bit going for us in some ways. In other ways, we had no business. So, I think you have to have courage. It's the other thing you need, and belief in yourself. But, you don't need business to start with. We did.
At what point does an agency continue to grow or decide to sell?
Well, I think that's always a very, very, the point at which an agency decides to grow or does it sell is a very personal decision. There are no rules about these things. But I think to certainly decide to sell before you've established yourself, before you've established a reputation, before you've established a very, very strong culture, I think is a very bad thing to do. Also, you've got to be absolutely clear, why am I selling? For what reason? Why should I be selling? And you've got to be doing it for the right reason. I've always said everything, in running a business, the last reason you should do anything is money. You should do it about philosophy, about a point of view, about opportunity, but the last reason you should do anything is money. I always say, money has a voice, it doesn't have a soul.
If you could start any new business now, any new business at all, what would it be?
If I could start any new business now, what would it be? I would certainly start something in the digital area. I think that's where lots of excitement is. I think it's easier to get established as a business if you're in that area. If you're making a physical product, it is actually quite hard. I mean, you're dealing with lots of issues and problems. But the digital area, I think, is very, very interesting. But actually, ultimately, start something you love. That's the most important thing. Because if you love it, at least one person's enjoying it.
If there's someone you'd like Source to interview or a question you'd like us to ask, then put it in the comments below now. If you'd like to meet more of London's creative industry, subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button above. And don't forget to like this video below. Thanks for watching.